abnormal, abnormal, abnormal. Definition: not conform to the ordinary rule or standard. Some synonyms: unusual, irregular, atypical. Usage note: abnormal is used to refer to occurrences or conditions that are not conformed to the ordinary rule or standard. In daily life, this word frequently appears in medical, scientific, or meteorological contexts to indicate unusual signs, which can sometimes be concerning. Commonly used phrases: abnormal behavior, abnormal weather conditions, abnormal growth. For example, the laboratory results showed an abnormal amount of protein in the sample. Abominable, abominable, abominable. Definition: very hateful. Usage note: in addition to the meaning of being morally very hateful, in everyday conversation, abominable is also used to describe something as being extremely bad or unpleasant. For example, very bad weather or terrible food. For example, the dictator was condemned internationally for his abominable crimes against humanity. For example, we spent the whole weekend indoors because the weather was abominable. Abominate, abominate, abominate. Definition: to hate violently. Some synonyms: detest, loathe, abhor. Usage note: abominate is a verb that is much stronger than hate. It expresses an extreme loathing or aversion toward a certain action, habit, or situation. For example, they abominate any form of animal cruelty. Aboriginal, aboriginal, aboriginal. Definition: primitive, unsophisticated. Some synonyms: native, indigenous. Usage note: most common meaning. Nowadays, Aboriginal capitalized with an A is commonly used to refer to indigenous people or natives, particularly those in Australia. Meaning in the lesson primitive, used to describe things belonging to the earliest stages of history, which have not been influenced by modern civilization. For example, the explorers discovered an aboriginal forest that had remained untouched by modern technology for centuries. Abomination, abomination, abomination. Definition: a very detestable act or practice. Usage: this word is often used to refer to something that is completely unacceptable from a moral or aesthetic point of view. For example, many locals consider the new concrete skyscraper to be an architectural abomination that ruins the city's skyline. Aboveboard, aboveboard, aboveboard. Definition: without concealment, fraud, or trickery. Some synonyms: honest, transparent. Usage note: tone or nuance. This word is frequently used to describe business transactions or agreements that are conducted honestly and legally. Related idiom: it is commonly used in the phrase open and aboveboard, meaning completely public and transparent. For example, we need to ensure that every stage of the negotiation is kept strictly aboveboard to avoid any suspicion of fraud. Aborigines, Aborigines, Aborigines. Definition: the original or earliest known inhabitants of a country. Aborigines is a plural noun, referring to the people themselves, the earliest known inhabitants of a country. Usage note: difference from aboriginal. Aboriginal is usually an adjective, meaning relating to indigenous people or primitive, unsophisticated. Cultural sensitivity note: nowadays, when referring to the indigenous people of Australia, it is more respectful to use the terms Aboriginal people or Indigenous Australians rather than simply calling them Aborigines. For example, the Aborigines have a deep spiritual connection to their ancestral lands. Abrade, Abrade, Abrade. Definition: to wear away the surface or some part of by friction. Some synonyms: erode, scrape. Usage note, usage context. This word is commonly used in engineering, geology, the wearing away of rock, or medicine, skin scrapes. Related noun: Abrasion, the process of wearing down or a scraped area. For example, the constant action of the waves will eventually abrade the sharp edges of the rocks. Abrasion, abrasion, abrasion. Definition: that which is rubbed off. This is the noun form of the verb abrade, to wear away or scrape. For example, she treated the small abrasion on her elbow with antiseptic. Abridge, abridge, abridge. Definition: to make shorter in words, keeping the essential features, leaving out minor particles. For example, the publisher decided to abridge the long novel to make it more accessible to young readers. Abridgement, abridgment, abridgment. Definition: a condensed form as of a book or play. Some synonyms: summary, abstract, condensation. For example, the school library provides an abridgment of Les Miserables for younger students. Abrogate, abrogate, abrogate. Definition: to abolish, repeal. Usage note, usage context. This is a formal word frequently appearing in legal or political documents. Distinctions: abolish, typically used for ending a system or organization, for example, to abolish slavery. Repeal, usually used when a legislative body officially cancels a law. For example, the government was accused of trying to abrogate the peace treaty. Abrupt, abrupt, abrupt. Definition: beginning or changing suddenly or with a break. Related adverb: abruptly. Some synonyms: sudden, blunt. Usage note, nuance. Besides meaning sudden, this word is also used to describe a curt or rude way of behaving, for example, an abrupt manner. For example, the road came to an abrupt end at the edge of the cliff. Abscess, abscess, abscess. Definition: collection of pus in a cavity formed within some tissue of the body. For example, he had to go to the dentist to have a dental abscess drained. Abscission, abscission, abscission. Definition: the act of cutting off, as in a surgical operation. Usage note, in medicine, used to refer to the act of cutting off a part of the body or diseased tissue, surgical removal. In botany, most common, used to describe the natural process by which a plant sheds its leaves, flowers, or fruit, for example, leaf abscission. For example, in autumn, the abscission of leaves helps the tree conserve water during winter. Abscond, abscond, abscond. Definition: to depart suddenly and secretly, as for the purpose of escaping arrest. Some synonyms: flee, escape, run away. Common structures: abscond with something, abscond from somewhere. Usage note, usage context. This term is commonly used in legal or news contexts when someone flees with stolen assets or escapes from police custody. For example, the cashier absconded with the bank's money. Absence, absence, absence. Definition: the fact of not being present or available. Antonym: presence. Related adjective: absent. Usage note, nuance 1, the state of a person not being at a specific location, for example, school or the workplace. Nuance 2, the non-existence or lack of something, for example, absence of evidence. For example, his absence from the meeting was noted by the manager. Absent-minded, absent-minded, absent-minded. Definition: lacking in attention to immediate surroundings or business. Related adverb: absent-mindedly. Some synonyms: forgetful, distracted. Usage note: nuance, used to describe a person who frequently forgets things or fails to notice what is happening because they are preoccupied with other thoughts. For example, he is so absent-minded that he often forgets where he parked his car. Absolution, absolution, absolution. Definition: forgiveness or passing over of offenses. Related verb: absolve. Usage note: religious context, commonly used in Catholicism to refer to a priest formally forgiving someone's sins after they have made a confession. Legal or general context: a formal declaration that a person is no longer responsible or guilty of a mistake or a crime. For example, the priest granted him absolution after his confession. Absolve, absolve, absolve. Definition: to free from sin or its penalties. Common structure: absolve somebody from of something. For example, the report absolved her from all blame for the accident.